Hello everyone, this is Monty Chicola, the president of Real Vision. I wanted to show y'all something today that's been really exciting for our customers. It's something not really that new that we've been doing. It's just one of those behind the scenes kind of things that customers need that may not be so exciting, but it's really important to them. And just wanted to show you how that works. And the title for today really is, I didn't know the IBMI could do that. And there's not enough time in the world. We've been on IBMI for literally before it was released to the public. So there's no way I could tell you what all you could do on the IBMI. It's been the machine that I've lived and breathed on since the day of its inception. And today I just want to show you something that's really unique. So let's get started and we'll just move right along here. Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to mention about Real Vision was that we're a 30-year company. We've been around the machine since it literally was in inception, called the AS400. We got put on it an emerging and advanced technology before it was released to the public. So we've been a document imaging system since then. I actually was the person that captured the first digital image on the AT&T card that was created for digital imaging. So we've never changed our place at all in the document imaging world. We started as thinking it was going to be a big thing. It has been a big thing, and we're just really proud of the customers we have and the long legacy we've had on the IBMI. So today what I wanted to talk about is in RVI we can capture documents. They could be OEM documents, we call that. That would be like Word documents, spreadsheets, and things like that. And today's presentation is going to be on email importing. That's really what I wanted to show you. So that's another thing we can do is actually monitor an email in basket, get the documents out of there, get the emails, separate the attachments, and bring them into the system. The other things we can do is run scanners, of course, which we've been doing since the day we started. Another thing this company does that I want to talk about today is they have a web portal, and we actually pull all their PDF files off their web portal and send it into the RVI document imaging system. It's their accounts payable documents. And the other thing Real Vision does do is we can capture reports off your system. So whether they're AFP reports or they're just plain old spool file reports, or whether you have a secondary forms package, we generally can interface with that and capture your pretty reports into RVI and make them display. But what we're going to talk about today is inbound emailing within RVI. So what happens here is that a customer has an email address, and they're telling their accounts payable people that when they go to send in a vendor invoice, just send it to this email address. And when they do that, Real Vision can actually sit there with the IBMI and monitor this email address. So every 5 minutes we go out and say, do we have anything new? Do we have anything new? And then eventually we'll get some hits. And what we can do with that is we can actually take from the email, whether it be in the subject line of the email, whether it be in the body of the email, or even the attachments themselves, we can get indexing information. So I can get stuff that they type in that this is invoice number 5 in the subject line, or I can actually open up the attachment itself and say, oh, okay, what is this? So RVI is sitting there monitoring this email address, and we're going to pick up this email and we're going to pump it into the IBMI and then send it into a workflow. So the email comes in, and then what we did is we wrote this really neat graph. And the graph isn't overly impressive or overly important, but what's important to know is it's working. That's the whole reason I actually wrote this graph. These pretty little GUI icons and things you see in our software, that's done with a piece of software called Sencha. It's an open source thing that I went to probably 10 years ago for the company, where we can actually build grids and graphs and charts and just great stuff. But the idea of this chart isn't to say, how many did we get today? We actually only show you the last 25, but it's a time stamp. And what I try to get customers to do is say, just go out there and look at it every once in a while, make sure it's running. So as you could tell, it's got 101 emails that come in, and of those 101 emails, we've put in 214 attachments into the system. And I ran this on the customer that we were dealing with. It's called Acme Tool Crib. They're based out of South Dakota. And this was just like 9 o'clock in the morning. They already had all this work that came in. So think about your users that are just sitting at their terminals and looking at their inbound web baskets and boom, their stuff just comes in. So while they're sleeping at night, they may have 50 emails that have come in waiting for them in the morning when they get there. And nobody's touched anything at this point. So it's really pretty slick. So what we do with the documents is we can take the actual attachments and open them up. So when we open them up, we can look for index information. In this customer scenario at Acme Tool Crib, we actually pull up the PO number, which is the yellow box down here at the bottom, and then we also look for the invoice number. So we get those two tidbits of information. We could get the date of the invoice and other things. At Acme, we don't. It just depends on what the customer's needs are. But what we'll do is we'll actually take that PO number and we'll take that invoice number, and then they're running S2K as their IBM ERP system. I have other customers that run JD Edwards and other ERP systems. It doesn't really matter. I even have customers that run PC-based ERP systems, and we can even talk to those. So the idea is that we take the PO number, we chain back to their ERP system, in this case it's S2K, and then we pull other information that we need. So because a vendor would not put their vendor number on their own invoice, right? They don't know you have them as vendor 13. They just know that it's Aladdin, is the vendor. So we go out there and chain to their database. And for Acme, we get the terms. So they know it's a 15-day, 30-day, 45-day terms on the invoice. We know who the buyer was because the PO knows who the buyer was that put it in. And then we know what location is actually on the invoice, and then we get the vendor number because they want that for their stuff. So what we do with this information, now that we've got it, we can actually stick it into our software. So when it shows up in the basket for the user, or shows it up in the inquiry at this time, we can apply these indexes. So now that we know we have some indexing information, and over at Acme, what they do is the rules that we apply for them is the buyer code. So I get the PO number, I go out and get from their vendor files the buyer number. Now that I know the buyer number, I can actually route it into that buyer's work basket. So the buyer did a PO, it was Tiffany. Tiffany's expecting the invoice to come in one day. She can match the PO to the thing. I route it to the right person who understands what they ordered, and then they can match that up. In some instances, we may get an invoice in there that doesn't have a actual PO number on it. Some people just didn't put it on there. In that case, at Acme, what I did is I actually looked at the ship to address. And based on where the product was shipped to, which office it was shipped to, then I would route it to the correct person for that office. So it was kind of a secondary tier routing. And in our software, there's no limit to that. I could say all kind of things like, if it's from the West Coast in California, then route it here. If it's over $5,000, then route it there. And we can just get deeper and deeper and deeper. But in this scenario, we go by the buyer code. If we don't have the PO number to get the buyer code, then we just look at the the shipping address, and then move it on down the road based on that. So what did we do here? Let's just see what I'm talking about. So when it gets into their actual system, all these indexes just came in. Nobody's keyed anything. So what I actually pulled was I pulled the vendor name, which I actually got from the database, their database, based on that PO number, which is this column. So I took that number, I went to their database. I got the vendor number, so now they don't have to key that in. We know who the vendor is. The invoice number, and I pulled it from the actual invoice. So in the invoice number, a customer will put their invoice number in there. So I grabbed that, and in this scenario, in our test box, I actually pulled the invoice date. And then from the PO, I actually pulled the amount down here too from the database. So that column, that column, that column, that column, that column, and that column all came in with nobody keying anything. I just picked all that data up. So now I know what to do with the document and where to route it to. And also, this is our inquiry screen. This is what we call our one-look solution. And this one-look solution actually has the GUI front end. It all runs web-based. Nobody has to put anything onto their PC. They just literally sign into one-look and do all their work without having to download anything. But as you can see, it's got this R and this S. The R actually says that it's in a routing profile, which means Monty picked it up, Monty figured out who the buyer was, and Monty routed it to that buyer. So it tells it's in routing, and the staple tells you that we stapled something to the back of it. What does that mean? I give the customers the option to staple the body of the email into the back of the invoice. So, I mean, if you're used to this kind of world, what you may see on the body of the invoice, it may say, pay this please by the 15th, or hey, this is to take care of something, whatever information. So they always wanted to know what was in the body of the email in case there was some specific instructions or something. So the little S there said that they evidently had me staple the the body of the email to the actual invoice itself. So when I go down to the next page, if I'm not mistaken, yes, I'm showing you that. So I bring up the invoice, and as you might notice, I did take the amounts out of there. So Acme did allow me to work with them on this presentation, and it was a little too much confidential information to show you the amount. So you get to decide how much you wanted to make that invoice. So I'm thinking $100,000. You could overdo me. You could make it $1 million invoice. Whatever your little mind would like to do is fine. But anyway, so I did take the amounts out. So don't think RVI was too stupid to capture that part of the digital image. It was just that little too much confidential information. We took it out. But anyway, as you can tell, when it comes into our viewer, there's a whole lot of things we can do with it. But what you can also see is it says page 1 of 2. So page 1 is the actual invoice, okay? And if I click down for the next, if I clicked on that little bar right there, that little page down bar right there, then what you would actually see is this is the body of the email. Now it's kind of junk, right? It's Monty sent it from Monty's address into our temporary test box, and I just put bill of lading and stuff. But it would be the actual live email that came in from Aladdin to them. It's just like we said, it's a little too much detailed information about a customer. So I just kind of dummied this up and sent it from our box. But you get the idea. It's that. Now, another thing we could do, Acme doesn't actually do it, but I do have other customers that do. We're a capture system. So we actually can capture your POs. So if you're running JD Edwards or somebody else and they're generating the POs and RVI is capturing your POs, I can automatically staple the PO to the back of the invoice when it comes in. So when I match up the PO in the first step, I'd also go get the real PO and put them together as a staple. So this would actually show staple document 1 of 3, and the third document would actually be the PO. So the buyer doesn't have to shop around to go find the PO or go to the JD Edwards system and find it, or the S2K system to find it. They literally would click down to the third one, and we can put them side by side. They can look at them side by side if they need. So it does show you that it was in routing. So we have a little button here to say show it in routing to tell you who it actually got routed to, because people like to know that. Why was it routed to Tiffany, or who did it get actually routed to? So we have a little show routing button, and you click on the show routing button. And what it'll actually do is in our one look solution, we bring stuff up from the bottom, we bring stuff over to the right, we bring stuff all over the place. So in this scenario, it brings it up from the bottom. So it actually says, hey, it's in Lynn's queue right now, and he stopped 1, if you can read that. I know it's fine print. But what it says is when Lynn gets through with it and it gets either approved or disapproved or whatever, the next stop is going to be John Paul. And you'll see this in some of our other customers where we may have stuff based on amounts that it says, hey, if it's over $500, do this. If it's over $5,000, do that. And we just tell you where this document's heading, so you know that based on what happens to it, where's it going to go. And we do track all that. It's really cool in our audit. So you can always say, where did it start, who did it, and where did it end up, right? Who touched what and when. And you can even see, I have customers that call in, and you can even see in our audits that, okay, Joan sent it to Bob. Bob said, no, that number's not right. Bob sent it back to Joan, and Joan sent it back to Bob. And you can actually see in our audits what day, what time they all did that kind of stuff. So we can see bickering, and sometimes that's fun. Don't tell anybody it's classified. Anyway, another thing about this is our workflow system now. So I've actually gotten out of Image Inquiry and I went into workflow. I know that's little bitty stuff, and that's on purpose because some of that's actually Acme stuff. These are some of their bars. But anyway, if you have authority, and it is based on authority, I may be the manager of, say, 3 people in accounts payable, as an example, and I have authority to see what's in their work queue. I want to know what's in their work queue. I want RVI to actually tell me if something's in their work queue and it's too old, right? But I do have authority to go out there and look at their work queue. And if I do have that authority, then I'll get a bunch of these bars. And each one of these bars means something. It means a different work queue, and it tells you how many things are in the queue, and I can click on it and see the items in the queue. I know you can't read it real well, but we actually age the items out here. Uh, this is aging based on RVI. It's not aging based on an invoice. I'm not telling you that the invoice came in on the 13th and today's the 23rd and it's this many days old. I'm saying this got into Joan's work basket 3 days ago. Okay, so it's based on our aging. So this doesn't really have to be an accounts payable system, and you don't have to use our workflow system for just accounts payable. This is just an example. We use it for all kind of stuff in transportation and banking and everywhere. It could be loan documents, and we could have the loan documents have to be processed within 3 days and us be aging it. So don't think the system is strictly an AP system. It's just what I'm using for an example. But if you could read this, it does say age from 1 to 3 days and 4 to 10 days and whatever. And that's really, and you get to decide those numbers, but that's really just so you can keep an eye on what's old. And when you see something that's that old, when you click on the queue, we'll show you the documents you're looking for without you having to spend a lot of time. Okay. So once I clicked on one of those bars, it brings me into that work queue. And into that work queue right now, I went into Lynn's work queue, and it was in a routing profile called Lynn JP, which was actually the Lynn, and then the John Paul stop after Lynn is why we named it that way. It could be anything. But anyway, so in that work queue right now, you can see Lynn actually has 4 items. And these are the 4. And Lynn could click right there and queue them all up for batch indexing. If he was in charge of indexing it, he could queue them all up for approval, and it would just rotate them one after the next into his work queue. And while they're in his work queue, he could do things like approve it, disapprove it, add notes to it, put callback reminders. We'll get into that in just a minute. Okay. So here it is actually on the approval screen inside of Lynn's queue, and all these little buttons over here on the left, they're really kind of secured. So it really depends on who you are as to which items you actually get. But this is pretty much the list of all of them. So he could email the document if he had authority to that. So if he saw this and he said, I need to send this over to Bob to look at for whatever reason, it's simply a click there to email it. Okay, and they could just email it out and put whatever he wants on there for information. Index details is really just to tell you when the document got there and things like that. Notes, we do support notes throughout the whole system. So if they put a note on there, it would be there forever. We can open it, we can close it, we can tell you who put it, when they put it, and all that kind of stuff. We also can do GL encoding. For people that know what accounts payable means, is we actually can have a pop-up screen I'll show you in a little while, and all of our GL encoding actually goes into our notes deal so that I can do searching on it and stuff. So I can say every time I had this thing, this GL account deal, and we can do all kind of analysis stuff on that, which is really kind of cool. The approval screen's there. That's the screen we're actually on right now. I can delete it from my work queue. If I don't need this anymore, I can just delete it out of the queue. The audit information is where I can go look and see what's happened to this document before. We actually list it down in the here audit information automatically. But if I wanted to go through and do some detailed searching inside there, I could go get some audit information. The little routing button allows me to route it to another user. I need Bob to see this as a workflow route. And I'm just going to route it straight to Bob, or I could route it to a whole route. I can say, excuse me, this needs to go to also to payroll, and I can route it into the payroll system and send it to whoever's in there that I need to do. Moving to a subgroup is really kind of a cool thing that I can set up. I'm Monty, and I can set up in Monty's work basket subfolders inside my work queue. So a stupid way of thinking of it is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Today's Tuesday. I can't get to it. I'm moving it to my Friday work subgroup, period. I'll get to it on Friday. Or it could be something like need a signature, need a check, waiting on this. And I can build whatever kind of subgroup I want, and I could just move it into my subgroup. And what that'll do is on that other screen previously where it was showing you all the little breakdowns of the bar graphs and the grid, it would just be another breakdown. It would say, these are the ones Monty skipped. These are the ones Monty has in Monday. And it separates it for the manager to see where you have your stuff. Okay. So that was that. And then with a callback reminder is where I could say I called somebody and they said, I'll have a check on Wednesday. And you can actually put a callback reminder that you're expecting a check on Wednesday, whatever you want the callback reminder to be. And when you put a callback reminder in, if the callback is in the future. So it's 3 days from now. We actually mark it with the green arrow saying you got a callback reminder, but it's green. It hadn't showed up yet. If it's today, it turns yellow. And if it's in the past, then we make it red. So you can kind of just look at it at a glance. If you have authority, you can download the item to your PC. So if you needed this, you could do that. And that's authority based. The last little thing's really cool that we've added not too long ago. It's attach a document. And the nice thing about this is, so if you're the buyer and you bought something and now they want some more information and say you've got an email, this is the actual email that where I ordered this or whatever, you could actually click on the attach button and drag and drop it from your Outlook straight into RVI. Then RVI will staple it to the back. So you'd actually end up with, in this case, one of three. And the third thing would actually be your email. So it gives you the ability of attaching a document, just like it sounds. And that document could be an image, that document could be a PDF file, that document could be an email, whatever you need to attach to the back of it. RVI can handle that. We'll just move right along here. All right, so if we were capturing your PO, we actually can automatically have the system bring them up side by side. So I could have the PO on the left and the image on the right and just be able to compare them straight up. So nobody has to hunt anything. That's just the way you like it to run. We have a little checkbox thing that tells it to split screen it, and we can split screen it and bring it up there, and it'll do it every single time as long as I got the PO captured. Okay. It really saves a lot of time. People really love this. Another thing we can do, and we normally engage this button anyway. So as I mentioned that when the emails come in, I open up the attachment, I look for the PO number and I look for stuff, and I may get it and I may not get it. You know, they just may not have given it to me, or they hid it bad enough that I couldn't find it or whatever. So what we allow you to do, at Acme, they use this also, where they would just key in the PO number and click retrieve indexes. So they either didn't give us the PO number, or Monty didn't get it right, or whatever happened to it. It just didn't happen. So they could key in the thing and then say retrieve indexes, and I'll retrieve what indexes I normally retrieve from the database on the capture side. So instead of me having to now go look up the vendor number, now go look up the other information, I could just at least put in the PO number, click one button, and at least I get all that information coming back in correctly. What's nice about this is it's from your database. So I don't have to say, well, it was really vendor number A63 and you misdid it and you got B63. No, it's coming in from your database. So the data's good. And it's quick. And we can do that. I should also mention, and some of our customers are IBM-I-based ERP systems. We can make that retrieve index button work even if you do have a PC-based system. So if your ERP system is a PC-based system, we can still make that work. That's one of the great things that we've done with Sentia. Sentia is really a great thing for us, is that it allows us to cross over platforms. It allows us to run on cross platforms. It's really a cool thing. And that's one of the great things about the retrieve index button, is it does let us do that. Another thing I just wanted to mention real quick is, and I tell people when they're really going to, and the reason AP is this example and AP is important is that everybody's got one. Everybody owes somebody something. So a lot of people can relate to this. They could also relate to their business, don't get me wrong, but they also can relate to, oh, get AP out the door and make it work. So when I tell people that, one of the things about an AP system and an imaging system is that you can have the imaging system drive the AP system, and you can have the AP system drive the imaging system. It's really whatever makes you comfortable. In some of our, in the Acme example, the one I'm running, they actually have the AP system driving the imaging system. All the information is really started in the AP system, and RVI is basically giving it the backup to make the thing work, right? But I've got other customers that actually take the images in and then have us go out to their JD Edwards system, pull in the information. They actually put their encoding in the RVI. So RVI knows the invoice is worth $753, and RVI lets them go ahead and select the encoding for the system in RVI, and then we track it, we balance it, we make sure it's all right. And at the end of the process, in the JD Edwards system, they call it the Z file. So they actually send the Z file out to from our software into their software. Then when their software actually creates the check, we actually give the JD Edwards system our imaging ID so they can view it from there, but also we get their voucher number back for the check. So we actually can bring the check in, RVI capture it. So now we got the full circle deal of the AP system. It really, really is nice and saves a ton of time. So now that we've got everything encoded and everything done, and they can just literally click the approve or disapprove button to make it go forward to the next stop. In this example, it was going to go to John Paul after it left Lynn. In some of our customers, it goes to the next person based on the amount of the invoice. Now it's got to go to this person to, they approved it up to their point. And I've got customers that the boss, the head person signs looks at every invoice before it gets paid. So the last stop is always the boss, and the boss looks at every invoice before it gets paid. So it really depends on the customer as to what they want and the volume they're doing. But I mean, we've got customers that do 1,000 invoices a day. And I've got people that fly around on airplanes and use the iPad and look at their invoices every day. So it really just depends on the customer. So what this thing actually shows you is that now that we've captured everything and it's gone through the whole cycle, we actually can click on the item, and with our linking and our stapling, we can actually bring up the check and the purchase order and the invoice all together. So we tie it all the way through. I can tell you when it got there. I can tell you what it did when it was in workflow, who did approves on it, who did notes on it. I can tell you how long it took. I can tell you if they paid it in the time zone that they were supposed to. So it was a 30-day invoice. Did we actually get it on this date? Did we actually pay it within the 30 day? We know everything there is to know about that piece of paper, right? And we can track it. But the nice thing is we can tie it all together for you. And at the end of the game, I can actually just come in and say, okay, you want to see what happened? This was the invoice that came in. That was the PO that actually ordered that invoice. And this is the check that we actually paid the stuff for. Even though that check may pay 6 invoices, it may be a $2,000 check, but it paid, this invoice was part of the detail of it was one of the invoices that it paid. I can still bring up that check. In RVI, I can attach that check to as many other processes as we want to. So we could basically staple that check to 22 invoices if that's what it paid. Just the same image. We're not duplicating the image over and over. We're just attaching it as a staple. Okay, but it does tie it all back together. If it had signatures that need to be there, we would have that. If it had approvals, the audits, everything, it tells you front to back what happened. And this is our audit, and it's kind of a sloppy audit, to be honest with you. This is a demo thing. So Lynn did all this. This is off one of our demo systems. But as you could tell, it gives you dates and time frames and tells you who did it, and they approved it on what date, and when did it go, and where did it go after it got approved, and all that kind of stuff. So basically, it tells you every step of the way. It even tells you when the email came in, we audit that. It even tells you when it got approved, we audit that. It tells you when the check got, we audit that. We audit every single step of the way. A nice little thing now that you've got all that data, just real quick to mention it, customers want to know what's their throughput. You know, how much stuff are we getting through? Who's doing all the work? What's going on? We've got graphs for everything. Graphs, you know, the truth is we love customers to call and say, hey, can y'all make me a graphic? Because I've got people that jump on that, you know, like crazy because it's just fun to do. But in this little graph here, what it does is it says, okay, how many things were approved and how many things were disapproved and how many things were batch indexed. What that means is, you know what approve and disapprove means. Batch index would be, imagine the one I told you that, hey, for whatever reason, when you get the PO number and somebody had to go out there and manually index, it's basically what that's saying. So how many things did somebody actually have to manually index? Well, in this case, evidently Matthew's the person that does all the manual indexes, and on this date, he manually indexed 4. And the thing that's important about that is on these graphs, I can see each individual buyer or each individual work queue and how much did they approve and what did they disapprove. And if you're a manager and you want to say, well, what did they disapprove today? You literally could come to our little graph and you click on the graph itself. So you say, Matthew, batch index this much. I wonder what it was. In our example, I think I did Lynn, and they had 2 things. So we're just going to go from here. And when we look at the next screen, so we're drilling down. So we got our little pretty graph, and our pretty graph says, what was that? And it was these 2 things is what he actually approved, as you can tell. He approved it. So now I know what the 2 things were they actually approved. And I said, well, I wonder what was that actual invoice? It was the Harry Potter invoice. Everybody knows that. Everybody's got one of those somewhere. So anyway, if you double click on the Harry Potter invoice, then what we'll actually do is we'll drill down to the actual item itself. Of course, it's not a Harry Potter invoice, but you have to just pretend it's good for you. Sometimes it's good for your imagination. So we'll actually bring up the document that tells you what happened all the way through. So if they have some disapproves and you're curious about what did they disapprove, you can actually drill down to the item quickly. Then if you want to call them or whatever, you've got something to work with. The next thing we do is in our software, we audit everything. And we audit who viewed something, printed something, faxed something, emailed something, signed something, put indexes on something. We tell you everything about everybody. If you've got authority to find it out, we can tell it to you, and we can tell it to you quick. So all the little charts we generate, and this one just happened to be a view chart as to who viewed what on a certain day, but we could actually say Lynn viewed this many things. If I double click on that, it'll drill down to what those items were. So if you have a question about did somebody email something, or you have a question about did somebody sign what they were supposed to sign, you could look at signatures for the day and then click on Monty and see how many things Monty actually signed on today or how many items he actually marked up. We can tell you everything about that. So auditing is just important. I mean, your documents are telling you something that you wouldn't know if you're dealing with paper. And I mean, in today's world, nobody wants to touch paper anyway. It became the bad guy in 2020. But the truth is that you got so much more information. You know how much stuff got throughputed. You know how much stuff got overdone that it took 30 days to do instead of the 3 days you thought it was going to take to do. So you can chase everything. So a few more little graphs just real quick. This one will tell you date ranges to tell you how many days did something take to process. So if you say how many things did we process inside of how many days? So 13 days we processed this many invoices, and they fell inside the terms of the PO. It could be that, hey, these are outside the terms. Well, why didn't we get that paid so we could get the discount? You could actually click on that item and tell you, okay, for whatever reason, these 3 didn't get done. You click on it, it'll show you who they were, and then I can tell you who actually was the person that had it in their work queue. Was it a reason? Were they just, lazy, or what happened? So you can drill down on these graphs to see what made that number. We also have the ability of telling you how many POs matched the invoices. People always say, was this $300 PO? Did I get a $300 invoice, or was it wrong? What was the deal? So we can actually track to see what matched up. And if it matched up, good. If it didn't match up, I'd like to know what that was all about. So we actually can tell you what items didn't really match the POs and what did they do for the day. These are the kind of graphs that customers dream up that we love to write because it's just fun to do. We do have the ability of having a dashboard. This dashboard just happens to be one that I had on my desktop. You get to decide what items, that little thing down here at the bottom where it says dashboard selection, that's where we've got all these little charts, and inside all these little charts you can pick which ones that are important to you. I'll just go through a couple of them. This top one tells you what users did views and prints and faxes, and these are based on the date ranges that we put in here. This is on one of our demo boxes, so God only knows. But anyway, it tells you who the user was. It tells you. So if I had a question to say, Lynn sent these 290 emails on this thing, I'd like to know what those were. You could actually click on that item right there, and we will show you the detail behind these numbers. The same is true about our little charts down here about scan audit. It tells you how many things were scanned and how many were imported. And if you click on the item, we'll bring up the detail behind that. This one here is work basket activity to tell you how many things were approved and disapproved. This one has email captures, and on this machine we didn't have any, but spool file captures only had one on this machine, so it wasn't a big deal. This other one is actually how many people signed on the system during that time frame, so we can tell you how many people actually signed into the system or was using the system on a date range basis. All that's based on this date range in the top left corner. But that's a dashboard. You get to decide what you want on it. There's other things that aren't on this one. It's just an example of what's actually there. I did want to mention that our workflow application does work on the iPad and the Android. So you could actually do your workflow job, your approving, disapproving, moving, subfolder, and everything off of a mobile device. It's really neat. On one of the applications, one of the customers that we worked with was that we had a button that automatically sent an email to the manager if they needed something to be looked at in AP, and they get a link and it says, do you want to look at this on your mobile device, or do you want to look at this on a web browser? And they click on whichever one they want, and it'll put it up correctly on their screen. It is really a nice little implementation, and it brought up that approval screen, and then they had the attach button so they could attach something. So if that person needed to attach, say, an email to say why did they pay that much for something or whatever, they literally click the attach button and drag and drop their email, onto it, and we capture it, and then and it automatically would send it back as part of our rules. What we did is on our rules, it would say, okay, the person that sent you this for more information was Judy, and whenever you put in the information and you deleted it out of your queue, it would automatically send it back to Judy, so she would be the recipient of the return, basically like a return sender, but it goes back into their work queue. Really a neat way to work it out. I loved it. Let's see what we got here. So I just wanted to mention as a wrap up kind of that we're not an a la carte system. RVI, that's a workflow example. It's an email import stuff that doesn't cost you any extra in our software. The goal I always had with the software is to say, if we develop it, you can have it. You bought my software, you can have it. Okay. And I want more people to use it than, us to develop something for one customer is not fun. We have thousands of customers. It's hard to tell all thousands what all we have. We find that as a major issue is that I send out a bunch of, email stuff to our customers and say, now we got this, now we got that, and see what, and most of them say, no, I didn't never see that. So, but the idea is for you to love what you bought already and you're a long-term customer. We do have customers that are right at 30 years with our software. And the reason is because we try to make it better and better and better and get them to use the new stuff. So that's just one of the things we try to do. But everything we have in our software is included. I don't care how many users you got. I don't care how many scanners you got. I don't care how many pages you scan a day. I've got customers that do 100,000 pages a day. I don't care. I mean, I'm happy for them, but I don't care if you're just a 2,000 page a day person or you're 100,000 page a day. It's just, I want you to use the software as much as you possibly can, and I'm not going to charge you extra for that. So the idea is to get, not just hooked on it, but that it's saving you time and it's making your life a lot better. So we're not an a la carte system. So if we have it, e-signatures, redactions, versions, all that imaging stuff, we do all that, and you get it all when you buy us. Let's see what else we got. Oh, I did get a quote from Sandy Beach. She's the IT manager over at Acme Tools. Is the lady that let me actually shoot these screens for y'all to do this presentation. And she gave me that nice little quote. It said, "I enjoy working with Monty," and it was one that I got to implement myself, which is fun. It said his support and response to our questions and concerns and issues have been fantastic. So that was a sweet little quote from her. They do about almost 500 invoices a day through that email processing step. So it's a pretty tested system, and they live and breathe on it. I mean, everything goes through that system, and I've got customers that send everything through that system. So it's pretty solid. And she wanted to get the lady that actually is the AP person in charge to send a quote, but she was out sick. So she was happy to do that for us, just to kind of let you know that it's not just pie in the sky and something that doesn't really work, but it's something that this customer and several of our customers actually live and breathe on. It has to be running every day. No question about it. So as a wrap up, let's see, I think that's about it. So the whole goal today was just to kind of show you some thought process of what you really can do on IBM. And I can tell you, there's nothing you can't do on IBM. That doesn't mean RVI does everything. It just means that that box is so powerful, so strong, it runs every day. You very seldom have any at all ever downtime on the machine. And it's solid, and it's got everything built into the operating system. Like I said, we stress test that box every day. We have literally thousands of them running all over the world every day. It's the least likely call I'm going to get is that an IBM is down. Normally it's because our customer went through a fire, or our customer had a hurricane, or our customer was over in China and they just had a great big huge tsunami came through. I mean, it's normally a really serious call when we get a call and say, hey, we're down. So the box is great. RVI has been a great piece of software to run on it. We've never backed up for a minute on thinking that we'd have made a wrong decision or a bad decision. It's just wonderful. And I've done work with IBM Rochester when they first started over there on IBM AS400. We've been up there and worked on projects with them. And most of the people I worked with back then are pretty much retired, but we do still have friends there. And I love getting invited to Rochester and working with them totally. So Monty Chicola, president of Real Vision, really enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got something out of it, and I look forward to doing another one. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye bye.